Show today. I'm Jo Alsh. I'm the owner of Acappella In-Home Care. This is Acappella Podcast. I'm an RN. We've got great information today. We are interviewing EDUCARE. Sharyn Fein, who is the executive director, John Steele, who is a very active board member. All three, I have to say, just powerhouses in the DFW area, because we all have such a love for seniors and really stand up for the rights of seniors and what's going on and preparing for the future in healthcare for the senior industry. And so I'm honored to be among great people. And so we're going to talk about EDUCARE. So Sharyn, tell us a little bit about EDUCARE and what you're doing.
In a nutshell, EDUCARE provides education and training for the resilience of the family and professional caregiver. As well as that, we teach cultural competency to caregivers that are working in marginalized communities. And specifically here in Dallas, our focus is the aging LGBTQ plus population.
So you're doing, you do an annual symposium. It is wonderful. It is so well known in the community. You've just done amazing things. It's the Compassion Fatigue Symposium. It's every year.
It's actually biannual now because we host one now in Fort Worth.
Right. So we're Dallas and Fort Worth. The next one coming up is April the 16th. And it's just wonderful information. So let's talk about compassion fatigue and what is going on with caregivers. I know there's lots of burnout. I, in particular, was with a patient with ALS yesterday. I needed to go twice yesterday. It was so exhausting on my back. I'm a nurse. I'm not the caregiver. I'm just there to do training and teaching and meet with families. But I do sometimes have that opportunity to wear those shoes, and our caregivers are our unsung heroes. So let's talk about what is the purpose of Compassion Fatigue and Symposium and what you're doing.
Okay, compassion fatigue is not a disease, it's not an illness, it's the effect of long-term caregiving. Whether you are a nurse or you're working as a direct care service provider through a non-medical home care agency, or you are a mother taking care of your children, compassion fatigue is something that we all live with. There's no way to really avoid it. It is the effect of caring more for others than you care for yourself. And it's our goal at EDUCARE to make sure that we preserve the health, welfare, mind, body, spirit, and emotional parts of our caregiving community so that we are prepared for what's coming in the year 2030. And Joe and I were talking about that before. As the baby boomer generation will age, in 2030, the largest population holder will be the older adult. And have we enough information and knowledge? Are we prepared with enough caregivers and resilience training to mitigate the effects of caregiving? So EDUCARE has taken it upon itself to specifically work with this population to avoid burnout. And we do it very somatically, and we integrate education and movement into our training symposiums. And we have a very good response. Education through different modalities of healing really helps sink in the knowledge and really puts it in the body and helps you carry it forward until we come back the next year.
And it's also for the personal caregiver. Sharyn's been taking care of her mother for years as her caregiver. My mother and I lived together for 9 years after my father died, and she had congestive heart failure. And I was experiencing compassion fatigue and didn't know it. I didn't know what the word for it was then. I wish I had been involved in something like this at that time, because it can help everyone.
Well, and same with me, with my grandmother. She moved in with me the last 10 months of her life. We were told she'd have 2 weeks, and the hospice gave such great care, she lived for 10 months.
Exactly.
I was still juggling family, I was juggling a full-time job, and she wanted me to be up with her at night. And I got to where I was so exhausted, I didn't know what was happening to me. My sentences weren't even coming out correctly. I just was not functioning. And even getting someone at night to help, there was a struggle because she made me feel guilty that I was sleeping and not caring for her. So, it's hard. It's hard being a caregiver. And as adults, we're juggling so much. Our lives are so busy already. And then to add aging parent to that, it's a lot. And we're all facing, or we're going to face, or have faced. So I want to talk about just some statistics. There are 15.7 million adults caring for someone with Alzheimer's. There are 43 million caregivers that are providing unpaid care to an adult or child and have in the last 12 months. That's 43 million people. 34 million of those are caring for people 50 and up. I am fortunate. I'm in private duty. Our clients have the money to pay for care. And so that's the area that I'm in. But 95% of Americans cannot afford to pay someone, and that leaves the burden on that adult child. I also read something that 57% of those caregivers don't have a choice. They don't have a sibling. They don't have an option. They don't have financial resources. And it's just staggering the number of people. In 2015, it was a $470 billion industry just in private caregivers. So it's a lot of money out there people are spending. But what about all those people that can't afford to spend? So finally, we've got some resources that you're doing, like in EDUCARE. So John, tell me how you got involved with EDUCARE, and tell me your story.
Well, I'm an old drama and dance teacher, and when I left teaching, my father had died. He had had Alzheimer's, had a series of strokes. My mother became very ill, and she opted to go into hospice care, and I became I volunteered, and I became such an advocate for hospice that I would go out and talk to adult children about what it had done for my mother and me. And pretty soon the hospice agency hired me, said to do education for them. And so that's what brought me into the business. But, and there's a lot of myths about hospice that we need to dispel, but it's so wonderful. And then I was in a traumatic car wreck, and I had a brain injury, and I was just recovering, and I went to Sharyn's Compassion Fatigue Symposium a number of years ago, and she had gong therapy as part of it. And I remember laying on that ground, on the floor, and experiencing all those vibrations, and I could just feel healing taking place. Of course, my dance background, music, and then we had Nia dancing, and you could just feel healing taking place in the body, and I thought, I want to be involved with this. So I hounded her until she put me on the board. And so now I'm working with education on the board. And,
well, I know it was your first symposium that you used drums, and I still remember those drums. People beating. It was that music and rhythm that is so healing to the soul. For me, music is just a wonderful healing component. And like you say, right, about hospice, there's several hospices that do music therapy, and it's such a tremendous part of healing. And
well, we're all energy. and so we've got to deal with that energy. And caregivers, you know, there's just so much to deal with, and we have no training. We just fall into it because that's what we need to do, and we don't have any direction or guide. And so what Sharyn has built here is so important for the soul of the caregiver. And we use the word compassion all the time. You know, it's so important.
Trying to.
If we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of others.
And that's the big story, is how do we have caregivers understand that self-compassion is first. That story of the oxygen mask is yours first before you can put it on the child or the person next to you. And you need to take it seriously without guilt. This is a problem for many caregivers. I suffered that myself, taking care of my mother. Well, I have to keep giving and giving and giving, and then what's left for me? And I found myself quite sick most of the time, always trying to pick up, always trying to get to the next whatever. And brought something that was very grounding into my life. It's a dance practice, and that's my escape. That's the place I go to, and I do it without guilt any longer because I definitely suffered it. It's me first, so I'm there for my mother, I'm there for my friends, I'm there for my family first, and then my community. But there has to be the me, the word, and that's a very difficult concept for caregivers because we give.
We're so giving.
Yes.
I know. It's hard. Well, and I had a hospice social worker explain this to me, and I share this with patients, with families. She said, draw a pie, and how much of that pie, show the number of pieces that go to care for your grandmother. So how much goes to care for your family? How much goes to your church or work? And I'd have like this much left for me. Yeah, and she's like, okay, so where is Joe in this? Like, oh my gosh, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. It's so important.
Caregivers are lost inside of their roles, and what we want to do to preserve them is to feed them knowledge and give them tools to carry on, tools to build resistance. You know, as a nurse, we have one of the highest burnout rates in our country. It's this industry of care. And if we don't teach it, and I'm not talking about at the bottom level, I'm talking the CEOs. If the top people don't understand what the caregiving community needs that's inside of their institution, then they lose. There's shortage, and then there's poor care, and then you have lack of retention, then your clients return to the hospital, and the state will ding you. It's just a vicious cycle if we just stop and care just a little.
And we have to take care of ourselves physically so that we don't get sick, but then we've got to take care of ourselves emotionally and spiritually. It's so important, and sometimes that's left out of the game.
And don't you feel, I don't know, for me, the older I get, the more I have to do. And I just don't have enough time to get everything done that I want to do. And like I wake up and think, oh, I've got A, B, C, D, E, F, you know. So you're right. So I've got to take a little time for me. So even those that aren't caregivers, but they do have that giving spirit, or they're the nurse or social worker or just loved one. Well, I want to talk about, too, becoming visible. And this was something you all did this year and had tremendous success. Talk about becoming visible, John.
Well, as Sharyn said, we reach out to marginalized communities. And, of course, in our area, the LGBTQ plus community, the aging community, many times people in that community feel invisible because as they age, perhaps they had to fight to come out of the closet when they were young. Perhaps they were advocates for equal rights. But as we get older and become frail and sick, sometimes we just don't have that fight left in us. And we feel like if somebody's going to come into our home to take care of us, or if we're going to have to go into a community to be taken care of, we feel like we have to hide again because we don't want to be discriminated against. And so we become invisible again. And we just think that's not fair. So Sharyn created this wonderful symposium, and we had over 250 primarily straight allies, caregivers, who registered and paid money to come learn about how they could better take care of people in this community by understanding more of what they go through and why they feel frightened or invisible. So, it was wonderfully successful. People really wanted to learn, and it really made us feel good. I know when I came out, when I was in my early 30s, I thought one of the reasons I was frightened about coming out is because I was afraid I might have to live in the shadows, and I didn't want to do that. And we're doing anything but that now. We're living in a great time, so it's.
Well, one of the things that we want to focus on for this community is to make sure that they are taking care of themselves. And if you're fearful, and why wouldn't you be because of what you've lived through historically, if you're fearful, you're not going to take care of yourself, and you are going to be alone unless you have surrounding support. And in this community, it's mostly family of choice. There are fortunate people that have wonderful support internally from their own natural families, but for the most part, so many don't, and are fearful and living in the closet in our senior living communities today. Just this week, John and I visited with someone who is living in a wonderful community that didn't even know that he was living in the closet and is very concerned, but he's afraid. And so in the history of this population, in this generation, the older adult, many of them went along with traditional lifestyles, got married, have children, and have families, and then came out much later. So coming out was really difficult because there was a family to just, share this information with a spouse and then potentially children. And then to become accepted later down the road only to feel afraid and go back to that lifestyle of sharing instead of their authentic life is wrong, just unjust and cruel. So it's our goal and our mission through education and training to teach cultural competency, because honestly, just because you have a piece of collateral that says you're LGBTQ plus friendly, I don't believe it. And we know, because of what we know is happening inside of the living communities here, that it is happening. So the piece of paper is useless unless we actually train what this community needs. And I'm sorry that we have to do this. It's just a sad story to me, and I'm about finding a way to figure that out here in Dallas.
Well, when I was a brand new hospice nurse, I worked at Parkland. Before I started hospice, I did a little hospice, and it was when there were a lot of end-stage HIV patients and AIDS was still pretty new, and people were afraid. And there was a gentleman that did not have one visitor. I had him as a patient 2 weeks in a row, 5 days on, 2 days off, and he was getting so weak. He did not have one visitor. And one day I went in, I had 3 or 4 things going on the hall at the same time. And he said, "Joe, can you feed me?" And his tray, he was too weak to pick up a fork. And I had so many things to do. I said, "Can you give me 15 minutes and I'll be back?" And he threw the tray at me. And it was such a learning experience for me that I did not take that time. I still think about it, and it was such a hard lesson for me. I felt horrible, and I learned what I should have done was either stopped what I was doing, gone to get a nurse's aid, but I shouldn't have put him off. And I knew the shame. He was living in shame, and he saw me as not wanting to help him. And that was not what was going on, but I really learned a lesson. And anyway, I think everybody needs to have an experience like that to understand that we're all unique. We all should be proud of who we are and just love each other and care for each other.
Well, and caregivers, people in our industry want to help. They want to be there. And everybody's going to, as Sharyn said, everybody's going to say we're welcoming. But that's not enough. Mm-hmm. You've got to understand the vocabulary. You've got to understand where people have come from and why they feel as they do. And, you know, our intake forms that we have in our society have, you know, a place for married, single, divorced, but not partner or
Wow.
or pronouns if you're working with the transgender community. You know, we now say, "Hi, my name's John. My pronouns are he, him, and his." And if somebody goes, "What?" It doesn't matter. We just go on and say, "How can I help you?" But that's a clue to somebody that needs to know that you're welcoming. That lets them know. Or wear just something simple like wearing a little rainbow pin.
Oh, okay.
You know, just the rainbow, and then somebody will see that and go, "I can talk to you."
That's an
You know,
automatic cue.
it's an automatic cue.
Trigger to say, okay, you're okay. So those are some of the things, some of our goals in our city as we move on through this year is to engage communities on what they can do to become more welcoming. We're talking about social engagement, talking about paperwork upon, you know, signing up for your space. You're going to take money from me. Well, then what can we do for you? Really understanding what family of choice means, and end of life for this community is very different than for you and me. Dispensation of remains, who's in charge, because we don't really have the freedom for this community to have what you and I have. And that really is a must. That's something that must change. So the more that we can educate people, the better we're going to be, because I do firmly believe that people want to be welcoming, but how do we do it? Training. EDUCARE offers training. We do it.
Well, I know I found some statistics too. 3 million LGBTQ people 55 and older. That is expected to double in the next 2 decades. And with that, they feel more loneliness. They don't have anyone to care for them. And when I never thought about most or many don't have children or have estranged from family. We had a gay gentleman who was on hospice that we cared for, and his parents would not speak to his partner. And they had been partners for 20 years. So it was so uncomfortable for our caregivers. We did the best we could, and the hospice got involved, and we worked together to try to deal with that. It was very uncomfortable for all of us. But so it's great that you have this program, and we can all learn to gain awareness and just things we don't think about, you know.
You know, Joe, the thing is, never assume. That's where we make our first mistake, is we assume. We have a gentleman that, you know, he was married, has children, grandchildren, but then he was partnered with his same-sex partner for 17 years, and this man died. So everybody assumes that he lives one way when that's not actually how he lives his life now. And so we need to ask questions. And it's all right to ask questions, and it's okay to be wrong. You can always say, "I'm so sorry, but how may I address you?" Or, you know, do you have someone significant in your life? Rather than saying, "Are you married? Do you have a husband?" Or, you know,
Don't make assumptions.
Yeah, don't make
It
assumptions.
all starts at the minute somebody walks in the door, in an introduction, and very simply identifying yourself as a person who's open and welcoming, or purely identifying on your door with a rainbow or a rainbow flag that says this is a safe space, because it doesn't feel safe to walk in. A beautiful man, Chet Flank, who was part of the beginning, the building foundations of Bridge Building Network, which is what we started as, said to me before I die, and he was an older gentleman, "I want to be able to walk into a room and not feel like I have to out myself." And I promised him that we were going to make that happen. We were going to do the very best that we can to make it a more comfortable place. I think we started at becoming visible with 250 people in my life. I will never forget that day. It will impact me forever as a day where hope and love and togetherness was so apparent and so powerful, and everybody left with such an important place inside of their minds, their bodies, their spirits. We represented everybody in that room, and it was just
But even those of us
amazing.
in that alphabet soup mix don't know about other people in that alphabet soup mix, you know? We know about who we are, but we all need to learn about each other. The thing is, you guys never had to come out. You know, you are always who you were, and it's fine. But in that other world, it's traumatic, and it's frightening. This one gentleman sits at a table with other men, and he wants to tell them. But, you know, after you've kind of lived a lie, it's hard to say, by the way, that's not really who I am now. So, you know, how can we make those kinds of things more comfortable for our residents and for those that we're taking care of?
But I
you know?
do see, like we talked about earlier, it is getting better.
Oh, it is.
We've come a long way.
Yeah, and I read a book recently, Hiding from Myself, and it was a gentleman who knew at 7 years old that he was gay, and was very involved in his church, and didn't come out until after 9/11 because he decided, I just can't live a lie anymore. It's just amazing story, and you could feel for him. Just his feelings, and it just gave me such a different perspective on how hard that would be, traumatic, like you say.
Well, and you know, we all have our own closets. Straight people, gay people, we all have closets in some way. And we've all had to kick those doors open and so we can understand that with each other.
Yeah, and
But
everybody
look at
has
the
a story.
But look at the podcast you're having today. 20 years ago, I would have never dreamed that I'd be sitting around a table like this with you. You know, this is pretty remarkable.
It's
where we
amazing.
are.
Okay, so that pin. Okay, so how can someone that's watching the podcast, how can they get one of those pins?
Call us.
Okay,
Call EDUCARE.
okay, good.
Send an email, reach out to us.
Go online and find us,
Go
read about us.
online and read about EDUCARE, educaredallas.com. I am happy, and I know John is equally happy to help anybody that wants to begin a welcoming environment for the potential, the future that they have in front of them. It's very easy. It will make you stand above the rest. You will-
And we're always seeking volunteers
Yes.
to help us. And we have training modules now that we've developed, PowerPoints that we can take out into the community to businesses to train those businesses. So we need future instructors for these. And, you know, I had some very close friends attend our symposium. And at the end they said, wow, we know more about you now. And, you know, we've been great friends. We love each other. But they said, we know more about your life now than we did. This is amazing. We never realized. You know, so it's just all about sitting down and talking with each other and learning.
Well, and one of the other things that was very impressive to me was the integration of the LGBTQ plus nonprofits and businesses with the allied nonprofits and businesses. A very prominent man, older gentleman in the community, wrote an email and said to me it was probably the very first time he's witnessed something like that happening in our city, where we were just together, and it was great.
Talk about the human experience.
So I'm a breaker of silos. I don't believe in communities doing one little thing together here as this community and doing another thing together here as this community. We do that with religion. We do that with culture. While EDUCARE was founded by me and I'm an ally, I have a gay board, LGBTQIA. So instead of being called the ally nonprofit, we are a human nonprofit. I told John I'm going to change our name to human.org.
I love that.
We are not going to be siloed because I founded something that was very personal to me. Because believe it or not, the minds that built our training were everyone's minds, because if you don't have the ally understanding and the LGBTQ understanding when you're creating a training, then you're creating an either ally training or an LGBTQ training. This is training that was built together so that it's compassionate. And that's what's missing. I probably went through 200 or 300 different free online trainings, and I said I couldn't bear to sit and watch that because I felt like I was being discriminated against for what I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and forgive me, I'm learning, and I ask lots of questions. So
I ask lots of questions.
you know, if we decide that we're a union and we're not separatists, then we can build a better world and we can make a better community and we can be human. I just am human, that's all. Don't call me ally, don't call me gay. The Kinsey scale floats, I can be her and I can be he and him and she, and I can be whoever I want, whenever I want. But for the most part, I'm a human being. And when humans are together in the same room without any biases or errors, it's beautiful and perfect.
And we just want to get to the point where our older folk, when they become sick and they become frail and they need, that they're not afraid. In our community, statistics show that our people wait oftentimes till it's too late to seek help. And, you know, and that's just so unfortunate because they're frightened.
Yeah,
And they may not have been frightened 10 years ago, but yeah. And so that's what we want to get to. So
I know with a nonprofit, Pajamas for Seniors is a nonprofit, donations can help, and it costs
Absolutely.
money. So how can we donate? How can we help you all at EDUCARE?
Oh, thank you. We have a little donation button on our website. We have one on our Facebook page. We very often run, donation, things on our Facebook pages. I have one for my birthday running right now. I thought to myself, I think I have almost 3,000 people that are on my Facebook page. If everyone donated $1, $3,000 would buy something like this. A caregiver workbook that we would have at our event. It would help us bring in more training, maybe from the Human Rights Campaign as we continue to, as we work to craft our next Becoming Visible event. Every penny helps us, and thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, I'm not good at that.
yeah, we want to take this on the road.
Yeah.
And it needs to
needed.
be. It needs
Yeah.
to be. And you're just raising such awareness, and it's just fabulous what you're doing.
Thank you.
I know the city of Frisco is doing a Give $14 on February 14th on Valentine's. So it would be great to give $14 on Valentine's Day to EDUCARE.
Oh, thank you.
And so I just encourage those donations, and thank you so much for what you're doing. Okay, let's talk real quick about your upcoming Compassion Fatigue Symposium. It's April 16th, right around the corner. And I want to talk about the speaker. Tell me about who is your big guest and what we can expect.
I love this woman. Her name is Elaine Sanchez. I have been trying to get her to do a symposium for me for about 7 years, and we finally came to a great agreement. And I'm excited because she is a family caregiver. She and her husband have built, it's called caregiverhelp.com, and you can find them on the internet. They've built together this wonderful opportunity to share their personal stories, and they do it through comedy. Elaine wrote this great book, Historically Funny, and she'll be selling this book at her event. I think that you will enjoy listening to her. She's developed a few programs. I don't want to say too much about it. I want you to come. And this is her workbook, which I have to really thank Garland Behavioral for sponsoring this at this event. So if you come to this event, you'll get the workbook, you can purchase it, and you'll also get CEUs if you're a professional. Nurses, social workers, LPCs, and so on and so forth. You can read all about it on our website and register to attend. It's about $48. Breakfast, lunch, snacks, the whole shebang, and somatic information. We have a wonderful person who's going to talk about healing through writing. So she'll do a little writing workshop. For those of you that don't know Martha Fittis from Christian Care, she's going to talk about the ethics of caregiving and why it's our ethical responsibility to care for ourselves. And then we dance, because I dance, and dancing is movement, and in order to rejuice your mind, body, and spirit, you have to move your
And
body.
if you can't stand, you can
can
dance in a
sit.
chair.
You can
sit.
sit. You can sit. You can stand. You can.
And if you want to watch, you can watch,
And
but
you
you
can
won't watch
watch.
for long.
You won't. It's a great day of self-care.
And it's not just for the professional caregiver.
No, family
We want to stress family caregivers,
Yeah.
adult sons and daughters who are taking care of their parents, friends who are taking care of others. It's a great day, and you learn a lot.
Caregivers.
All caregivers.
All caregivers. Caregivers of children, caregivers of the animal community suffer tremendously.
First responders.
All
Oh my gosh.
professionals, lawyers, doctors, dentists, anybody who has their hands on your body is a caregiver, or on something else is a caregiver. So we encourage everybody to
It's a
attend.
great day. You're pampered, and you're made to feel special.
Tell me just real quickly, we'll wrap up, maybe a testimony or testimonial you've gotten about somebody going to the symposium and what a difference it's made.
It's interesting that you bring this up, because a caregiver is being featured in our newsletter that's going out this week. And her experience is so impactful to me. She talks about how, as her role as a caregiver, she can't help but take on what's happening to her client. And she's been with this client for probably 10 years. And if the client is up, then she's up. If the client is down, then she's down. And every year I actually buy her a ticket to attend this event because of her commitment and my concern for her mind, her body, her spirit. And she said, I have learned so much from attending these events that I really feel like it helps me carry on, and I look forward to coming back every year. So the response is great. We do an evaluation at the end, and they can't get their CEUs unless they turn it in. And I say, give us information and knowledge to share as we craft the next year, and it's always thank you. We feel so good. So
Sharyn and I are both on the board of the Adult Protective Services of Dallas, and we were talking with some of the supervisors, and they said, "Gosh, we want all our people to come, but we can't find the time to come." And we say, "How can you afford not to find the time to come?
Yeah.
It's a day. Find a way to take that off for yourself, to rejuvenate and to heal and feel good about what you do, so you can go back out into the world and help others feel good."
Well, and it's a little over 2 months away now.
Yeah.
So if you want to go, make arrangements now. Ask for that one day. Get a family member to fill in for you, or call a caregiver agency like Acappella, or there are plenty in Dallas that could help you. Ask a friend to just
Yes.
give you a break for a few hours so you can attend and be rejuvenated.
And we appreciate Acapella's participation in our events.
Yes, and I'm
Thank
very
you.
excited about it. It's a great program, great day, and we're going to be there again in April, and can't wait. And thank you guys so much. This has been so informative for me, and I know for the listening audience. And we will see you in April, and I hope I can have you again back as guests.
Thank you for having
much.
us.
We
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Deus,